Hello, everyone. So it's my pleasure to introduce here today Nicholas Bakertzis. Probably you have read his CV associated with the short abstract of his talk, but I will give some words in order to introduce him. Nicholas is an associate professor at our institute, pursuing his research as a member of STAR-C since 2010. He studied Byzantine archaeology and social anthropology in the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and received his PhD medieval and early modern art and archaeology from Princeton University, famous and precious university. He has also held postdoctoral position at Columbia University in New York and Koç University in Turkey. Koç University in Turkey. His research and publication focus on interdisciplinary approaches to Byzantine monasticism, medieval cities and fortifications, and the island landscape of the Byzantine, medieval and early modern Mediterranean. More recently, his works explores issues of heritage and cultural identity in historic cities. As the director of the Andreas Pitas Art Characterization Lab, he is leading research on aspects on the history, the materiality, and the provenance of works of art, and hence through the use of advanced digital and analytical methods. He also led the Cultural Heritage Task Force of the Cyprus Climate Change Initiative. His awards and fellowships include support from the European Commission, the Cyprus Research and Innovation Foundation, the Princeton Seegers Center for Hellenic Studies, the Leventis Foundation, Dumbarton Oaks, and the Getty Research Institute in Los Angeles. In the abstract he gave for the talk today, entitled New Tools, Old Tastes, Frontiers, and Context for Heritage Research, I much appreciate that an art historian claims that, quote, advances in science and technology have revolutionized how we study the past and its materials remains, end of quote. This is not so frequent occurrence. Heritage has to be studied in a collaborative way, humanities with natural and digital sciences, for its optimized understanding, conservation, and promotion. So thanks you, Nicola, for that, and we are eager and impassioned to hear how you go beyond the boundaries of the different disciplines involved in heritage science. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Michel. Of course, you stole my first sentence, but it's the perfect bridge. So dear colleagues, students, dear friends, thank you all for coming. So let's see what I can do about the humanities input in this interdisciplinary environment of the Cyprus Institute. So advances in science and technology have revolutionized how we study the past and the material remains. New tools, innovative applications, and groundbreaking scientific methods are able to shed light on hidden secrets and enable discoveries that can enrich our understanding of past societies. These approaches provide us with fascinating contexts of interdisciplinary research and innovation, producing massive, for our field, amounts of new information and results. In this new age of endless possibilities, the proper use of results is a key challenge. Past problems related to the documentation of heritage assets, as well as access to data, are largely addressed or continue to be resolved by the amazing developments in digital technologies. Each day brings new science and technology breakthroughs which effectively shift what we can describe as the frontiers of heritage research. With little doubt, at least in my head, it is the constructive and analytical interpretation of the results of this ever-developing array of new tools that is now setting the bar of research excellence in our broader field. In this context, the humanities need to play a primary role in providing a critical and synthetic understanding of how scientific and technological methods help us to gain new knowledge about past societies and the cultural narratives shaping our sense of heritage and identity. What I will discuss today draws from research work at the Cyprus Institute's Andreas Pitas Art Characterization Laboratories at Starcy, where our interdisciplinary team works together to develop and apply a wide range of analytical and digital methods to address issues of materiality, technique, typology, style, and provenance of monuments, works of art, and archaeological objects. And I want to thank every single member of our team for their contribution to our collective achievements. We are celebrating 3 years of operation for our APAC labs. For today's talk, I decided to select specific examples from our research and to use our analytical results as a departure point for discussion as I use our discoveries to revisit all themes and topics, and in a way, I will try to provide a kind of contextual translation for our research work and to explore how new tools reshape old tales and narratives. I will begin with a story of a small painting panel whose hidden secrets shed light on a much bigger story concerning the work of one of the greatest artists in history. The master in question is none other than Domenikos Theotokopoulos, widely known as El Greco, meaning the Greek, celebrated and identified by his place of origin during the peak of his long career in Spain. The oil-on-panel painting measures 27 to 19 centimeters and is entitled St. Francis Receiving the Stigmata. It features a representation of the standing figure of the saint who was born in 1181 in the Italian town of Assisi, dressed in the brown wool robe of Franciscan monks, himself being the founder of the Catholic monastic order, which was named after him. The order was known for its austere rules, dismissal of earthly comforts and wealth, missionary activity, and for its social work and support of the poor and the weak. The saint is depicted frontally, approximately from the waist up, as he opens his arms to reveal his open palms, which bear the stigmata, from the Greek word stigma, which were the bodily marks corresponding to the wounds caused by the nails used to crucify Christ on the cross. In the Catholic religious tradition, the physical appearance of the stigmata on palms, wrists, and feet was considered a miracle associated with visions and contacts with the divine. Receiving these physical signs of torture was considered a blessing which connected the chosen individual with the trials and wounds suffered by Jesus Christ. The earliest and first stigmatic in Christian history was St. Francis. The representation of the miracle became a standard iconographic scene in images related to the life of St. Francis. The earliest among several others from Giotto di Bondone was painted between 1295 and 1300 for the Church of St. Francis in Pisa. The story describes the appearance of a six-winged angel, a seraphim, which appeared to Francis in his later years. As the angel approached, and his heart was, Francis could see that the angel was crucified. He was humbled by the sight, and his heart was filled with euphoria, joined by pain and suffering. When the angel departed, Francis was left with wounds in his hands, feet, and side, as if caused by the same nails and the lance that pierced Christ's side. These remained as marks on him, which were confirmed later by a series of witnesses, like Pope Alexander IV. Giotto's composition has a strong narrative dimension, attempting to establish the descriptive attributes of the depicted scene. The saint is represented in an outdoor setting, kneeling at the exact moment he faces the angel who has taken the appearance of crucified Christ. The stigmata marks are depicted to be projecting from the angel onto Francis. The lower parts of the panel, known as the predella, shows more scenes from the life of the saint. Our painting captures the miraculous event in a very different way. Although Francis is also depicted in an outdoor setting, there is no sign of the angel or the descriptive details of the miracle. The face and the overall posture of the saint project calmness and acceptance in the presence of the divine, which is evident as a source of light over Francis. His head is slightly tilted to his right as his wide-open eyes turn towards the lit and animated with cloud sky. On the whole, this painting composition has a deeper spiritual meaning and aims at an audience which is familiar with the story. There is no need to depict explanatory details. It's enough to capture the powerful moment of spiritual fulfillment and ecstasis. As you know, Theotokopoulos was born and raised in Crete during Venetian rule. Based on archival sources, we are now certain that he was fully trained and established as an artist in the Cretan capital of Heraklion, then Candia, able to work in both the Byzantine tradition of icons as well as in the Italian tradition of the Renaissance. To put it simply, Domenicos was artistically bilingual, able to work in both the Maniera Greca as well as in the Maniera Latina. You may have seen the beautiful work attributed to him in these early years of his career. I'm showing you two examples of his skill as a fully developed Byzantine master. The icon of the Dormition of the Virgin to the left, and the icon depicting St. Luke painting the Virgin to the right. The first is kept at the Syros Island Metropolitan Cathedral, and the second is at the Benaki Museum in Athens. Both works bear the signature of Domenicos Theotokopoulos, which effectively provide the evidence to support their attribution to Greco. Without the signatures, there is really no way art historians would have been able to connect these two paintings with the artist who became famous in Spain for his dramatic, expressionistic religious paintings. Actually, the discovery of these icons has truly revised our understanding of the artistic genius of Theotokopoulos. What we need to keep here from these two examples is the high level of the artist's Byzantine technique, as well as his synthetic ability to develop a composition which solidly draws from late Byzantine iconography, while showing off the artist's awareness of Renaissance art, as well as his capacity to paint in the Italian style. I will quickly point to some of these details which show these abilities of Greco. In the example of the Dormition of the Virgin, what is considered to have been taken directly from Italian models is the way he arranges these row of angels around the statuesque figure of the seated Virgin. The three-dimensional way that he's depicting the Holy Spirit in the form of a doll literally flying outside the canvas, and also decorative furnishings below, like this candelabra, which is very much taken from Italian Renaissance models. To the right, in St. Luke, I think you can easily recognize that the figure of this angel that is coming down, crowning Luke painting the Virgin, is nothing else than a representation of a Nike. Of a Nike, which was taken from Italian Renaissance prints that were circulating in Crete at the time of Greco. A very important work for the study of Greco's art and its evolution between Crete and Venice, where he arrived around 1567, is the painting of the Adoration of the Magi, which is kept at the Benaki Museum in Athens. Also painted on wood, like the two icons, the composition represents the three Magi and their companions visiting baby Jesus and Mary presenting their gifts. The scene is taking place in the countryside and the site of a semi-ruinous ancient, most probably Roman building, as it is clearly shown by the decorative details of the columns bearing Corinthian capitals and the crossvaults of the partially collapsed dome still bearing its central oculus opening. The organization of the composition and efforts to show perspective, the use of color and light, the naturalistic representation of figures, the landscape background, and the inclusion of references to antiquity show the direct influence of Venetian Renaissance and Mannerism models. What is remarkable is the presence of a Greek inscription identifying the hand of Domenicos as responsible for the work. It's located on the marble step behind the figure of Mary, depicted sitting and presenting Jesus to the Magi. As a result, the painting is widely celebrated as one of the earliest surviving works of Greco, proof of his ability to paint a la Latina. The work is actually dated between 1565 and 1567, notably before his departure for Venice, after which we would logically expect to see fully developed Western European works by Theotokopoulos. With little doubt, the most intriguing aspect of El Greco's work in his artistic development is in the context of his physical moves between Crete, Italy, and Spain. The study of Greco's life journey through important centers of artistic and cultural life points to his transformations from a Byzantine artist in Candia to a promising young painter immersed in 16th century artistic developments in Venice and Rome, and finally to a mature, flourishing professional in Toledo. However, this linear understanding of El Greco's development presents problems as it adheres to a conventional narrative of the chronological and geographical evolution of artistic styles and movements in Western art. For the most part, each chapter of Theotokopoulos' artistic production has been the focus of different groups of specialists in Byzantine, Renaissance, and early modern European art. This has been a fragmented scholarly approach which effectively treats El Greco as a cultural chameleon able to creatively assimilate to the different artistic environments and their expectations. Fortunately, over the past 20 years, and a little bit more, new discoveries and scholarly work have significantly contributed to a revised understanding of El Greco's artistic and cultural experience, especially of his early years in Crete and Italy. Theotokopoulos is increasingly appreciated as a forceful agent of artistic creation, able to continuously innovate and experiment while dynamically reflecting on his Greek and Byzantine heritage, as well as internalizing experiences along his life's journey. His genius was appreciated early on by Julius Greffe, who in 1910 addressed Greco as a prophet of modern art. And here I want to thank Dr. Peters for pointing me to the work of this important German art critic. These developments in our understanding of Greco's work have coincided with the growing importance of science and technology in the study and conservation of works of art. Returning to our painting of St. Francis, I want to mention that the particular miracle of Francis receiving the stigmata was depicted in other paintings by the great master and his circle. Different examples show variations of the treatment of the theme. To your left is a painting from the Museo di Capodimonte in Napoli, dated around 1569, where the saint is depicted kneeling in the rural countryside as the form of the angel appears between the clouds. His companion, Brother Leo, is thrown on the ground in awe as he's witnessing the miracle. Another example today at the Walters Art Gallery is from his later years in Spain, dated around 1585, 1590. And it shows a different perspective with Francis depicted from the side as he's directly interacting with a Christ-looking seraphim. I could go on with other examples of the development of the iconographic type, but I think I've provided some context that can permit us a broader understanding of our small painting panel and its position in the long career of El Greco. The painting arrived to our APAC laboratories attributed to El Greco. We were fortunate to have ample time to analyze it and to perform a series of analyses. As many of you know, our labs integrate expertise in art history, digital 2D and 3D imaging, and physicochemical analysis towards an interdisciplinary research pipeline which is based on portable and bench instrumentation. We analyzed the panel aiming to map its state of preservation, aspects of its materiality, as well as details of the technique employed by the artist. First, it was very important to be able to identify damages in the overall structural integrity of the panel. For example, note the almost vertical crack, which likely was due to the movement of the wooden support caused by aging or humidity. The crack affected the pictorial layers of the St. Francis panel, You see how it looks in both in UV and in infrared reflectography images. Also, you see this close-up detail. You see the crack coming down almost in the middle of the palm of Francis. This is a raking light image. Digital microscopy also revealed losses of pigment layers. Our analysis also revealed details of the painting's stratigraphy. A thick ground white layer was applied on the wooden panel, and infrared reflectography allowed us to see some preparatory drawing details, and also you see here, you see some choices that El Greco had made in the beginning before proceeding in the finalization of the execution of the painting, especially the contours of the face, of the details of the face, and also his hands show some of these preparatory drawings. Another detail that is interesting is that originally in the infrared reflectography image, you can see here that there were some other thoughts. He started drawing and sketching a landscape, maybe a mountainous scene, but then later his choice was clear. He chose to leave that option and continue with this kind of animated sky representation. I have another image here. This is just a map of the various points where we were able to use our XRF to map and identify the pigments, the color pigments analysis. There is also details here, sorry, go back. A detail that we also were able to identify some retouchings. For example, the faded representation and details of those trees and bushes on the mountain behind the saint had faded, and then at some point some other artist, the conservator, intervened slightly to refresh them while also painting over the cracks of the natural cracking of the painting. And this is a microscopic image of the detail of the orange-pink sky behind the saint. Our most important and unexpected discovery was hidden in the area below the left hand of St. Francis. Microscopic and infrared images revealed the remains of Greek letters belonging to the unknown signature of Greco. The pigments used and the material details of the preserved letters show no trace of overpainting or efforts to forge the master's signature. And here I want to highlight the meticulous work of our colleagues Svetlana Gasanova and Roberto Georgiou, who were able to identify and map the traces of the signature. The preserved letters spelled here delta. You see here. Here delta. There are some other remains. It's difficult to read, pointing to a standard signature type used by Byzantine artists, meaning the hand of the name of the artist. In our case, only the capital letter delta has been preserved from the full name of Domenicos. Comparisons of the lettering and the text with other preserved examples of Greco's signature helped us to contextualize our fascinating discovery. The inscription matches two other signatures by Domenicos, namely his signing of the icon of St. Luke, painting the Virgin, and the painting of the Adoration of the Magi that I showed you earlier. I'm showing you the two inscriptions as they are preserved. In the case of St. Luke, the inscription is here. You see here in detail, here Dominicu. And in the case of the Adoration of the Magi, is right here, tiny letters, here Dominicu. Of course, what is particularly intriguing is that the same Byzantine way of signing an icon was used in two very different paintings, a Byzantine icon and an Italian Renaissance religious painting. Yet the use of Greek leave no doubt about the choices of Theotokopoulos and his decision to remain a Greek artist trained in the Byzantine tradition. Of course, we know well that Theotokopoulos continued to sign his works in Greek throughout his long career. Still, his standard signature was the full writing of his name, Dominikos Theotokopoulos made, or Dominikos Theotokopoulos the Cretan made. Dominikos Theotokopoulos Epi, this is the example from the painting of St. Andrew and St. Francis at the Prado. This is from his Spanish period. And the other is from the Dormition of the Virgin, where he's signing again as a Byzantine artist. And you see it says Dominikos Theotokopoulos Odixas. Dominikos Theotokopoulos, who has made or who has shown. And finally, I'm showing you the comparison of our signature of the St. Francis panel, here below in blue, and with the two examples. This is from St. Luke, and this is from the Adoration of the Magi. And there are some details of the way he executes the he and also the delta, also reminiscent of the Dominikos letter from the Adoration, from the Dormition of the Virgin painting. I think there is no doubt that we have, it's the similar hand, it's the same signature of Greco. Before our analysis, the painting was dated between 1570 and 1575, the period when Theotokopoulos was active in Rome, enjoying the support of patrons like Cardinal Alessandro Farnese and the friendship of humanist and librarian of the Palazzo Farnese, Fulvio Orsini. We don't know a lot about Greco's stay in Rome, with scholars assuming that the lack of information means that he did not receive the large commissions he was hoping for. Disappointed by his prospects, he departed for Spain in 1576 or 1577, hoping to benefit from work for King Philip II's Escorial project. The discovery of Greco's signature and the analytical results of our work of the St. Francis receiving the stigmata panel carries interesting implications for the painting in the context of Theotokopoulos' prolific artistic production. First, it confirms its authenticity and attribution to Greco. Besides the presence of the inscription, the analysis of color pigments and the stratigraphy of the panel are in line with the technical details and the material used by Greco and artists of the period. Although there is no doubt that the painting is an excellent example of the work of Theotokopoulos in Italy, the Byzantine type of signature, the hand of Domenikos, begs for further comparison with other examples of the same signature style. I want again to highlight the fact that both the icon of St. Luke and the panel of the Adoration of the Magi are dated in the last years of Greco in Crete, and in view of this comparison, I would consider an earlier date for the St. Francis panel, estimated around the key date of 1567, the year of his departure from Crete to Venice. It's difficult to determine with certainty if the painting is the product of Greco's works in Candia or a work related to his transformative early years in Venice, where he is believed to have been influenced, even worked with the elder Titian, and was inspired by the work of Tintoretto. The signature suggests a Cretan date, while stylistic and technical aspects of St. Francis' panel share similarities with other early works, such as the small panel of the Baptism of Christ to your left, which is now kept at the Historical Museum of Crete. And it has an estimated date in 1567, which is clearly the milestone year for Greco's career, as well as the 1569 Capodimonte version of the St. Francis Miracle. Although the theme of the painting, representing one of the most influential Catholic saints, points to Italian sources of inspiration, it's very important to note that Venetian Crete was very much immersed in the religious life and culture of Italy and Western Europe. The cult of St. Francis was big in Crete and Candia. A centrally located Latin monastery dedicated to the saint was the most important and active monastic institution in the city. Its church survived through the 20th century. You see this old photograph and this sketch. And all this means that Greco's interest in St. Francis, his exposure to the iconography of scenes from his life, and the related production of religious paintings of the saint could very well have taken place in his home city of Candia before his departure. But I will stop myself for any further suggestions at this time. There is definitely more to learn and explore about this painting, and for now we are particularly proud to have scientifically confirmed the work's attribution to Theotokopoulos and its inclusion in the big exhibition of El Greco at the Grand Palais in Paris. Change of scenery now, as I will turn to a very different example that highlights the contribution of dendrochronology in our study of the past. More specifically, I want to use the opportunity for the analysis of wood from the Paphos Gate in Nicosia to revisit the study of the particular site. As you know, the medieval walls of our city are widely considered Nicosia's most important monument. They date from the last years of Venetian rule over the island and are related to the anxious efforts of authorities to prepare for the imminent attack of the Ottomans, which eventually captured the city along with the rest of Cyprus in 1571. Designed by the famed engineer Giulio Savorgnano, the defensive enclosure replaced the existing fortifications of medieval Nicosia, with parts of the city being demolished to accommodate the overall effort. Savorgnano's circular enclosure was supported by 11 heart-shaped bastions and were perforated by 3 gates. It's considered one of the best examples of Renaissance and Venetian military architecture in the Eastern Mediterranean. The enclosure continued to define the urban experience of the Cypriot capital for centuries to come, as the city did not grow before the outer limits of its iconic Venetian walls until the turn of the 19th century. It is worth mentioning that following 1878, the year when Cyprus came under the control of the British, Nicosia began to progressively grow beyond its historic core. The ensuing decades saw increasing attention to issues of heritage preservation. The first curator of monuments, architect George Jeffrey, promoted the conservation and protection of monuments throughout the island. Among them, the walls of Nicosia, which had significantly suffered from centuries. Domenico is a unique spatial context with a long history, which also mirrors the more recent complex realities of the divided city. Named after the road that led to the western surroundings of the capital and eventually to the city of Paphos, the gate is literally located on the Green Line. For those that, I'm sure you're all familiar, you see it's actually the place where the Green Line in the city is at its thinnest. It's only a barbed wire that separates the two sides. Originally, under the Ottomans and then under the British, and you have these early sketches from the early years of the British rule, the upper part of the gate was used to house military barracks, later the police force of the city. And sometime during the beginning of the 20th century, a wide opening was cut, the one that we use today for the road, that allows communication between the outer parts of the city, and this is the part of the city that first developed by the British, and the interior. And it's interesting to also notice that today both sides are, bare embattlements, which really witness the still tense realities between the two sides of the Green Line. And also, for those of you, I like showing this, like next to the gate, the ruinous site of the old coffee shop, the Spitfire. It's a reminder of how time has frozen in that segment of the buffer zone, which constitutes the Green Line today. Very close to in the interior, behind the Green Line, you have the Catholic Church, literally again stuck in the Green Line. You enter it from the west, but its east end exits the buffer zone into the north part of the capital. Further on is the medieval Gothic hollow of the Castelliotissa, a beautiful space that is believed that once it belonged to the Lusignan palace that occupied the particular site. For the last few years, the site of the Paphos Gate has been the focus of an extensive preservation project led by the Department of Antiquities. Excavation and restoration works have enriched our knowledge of its building history, including archaeological evidence of the site before the construction of the Venetian walls, as well as the remains of the medieval and Ottoman aqueduct supplying water to the city and the successive levels of paved roads leading to the gate. Architecturally, the gate itself is a tunnel-like barrel-vaulted structure that penetrates the width of the thick wall. On its interior side, two small rooms, you see the doors there, were spaces that were used by the guards, and also the excavations uncovered that there was a very sophisticated system of drainage to accommodate flooding. The gate is next to the Pedieos River, and before work started, I don't know if you had the chance to witness this, on one of these flash floods that hit Nicosia around this time of the year, I was there and I could not see the gate. The whole gate was totally immersed under water. This has been fixed now. Over the interior side of the gate, you have a plaque, the Tugra of Sultan Mahmud II, who reigned between 1808 and 1839. It was placed over the gate at around 1820 due to some restoration works. Also, what was discovered during the preservation of the gate, in its interior, there is a cornice that essentially is used to base the barrel vault, and there is a cornice that is made entirely with marble slabs that belonged to an earlier Lusignan Latin cemetery, still bearing inscriptions in Latin and other decorative details. And this is actually hard evidence of the fact that when the Venetians decided to build the new walls, they demolished, we estimate, around 1/4 of the existing city. And material from that city, as we have in this case, were used in the walls. A completely overlooked remnant of the gate's long history was the wooden door that once controlled access to the city for those arriving from the western parts of Cyprus, and hence the name of Paphos, as I mentioned. The rectangular two-leaf door blocked the gate's western arched opening from the inside. As part of its preservation efforts, the Department of Antiquities decided to care for the remaining parts of the wooden door, which rested against the interior sides of the gate's tunnel. The lower parts of the vertically positioned wooden beams comprising the gate had deteriorated as they had been exposed to water and the considerable debris that had accumulated over time inside the gate. Our Starcy team was involved with the project from the beginning, and along with our Department of Antiquities colleagues, we thought of sampling the gate's wood as part of our work at the Cyprus Dendrochronology Lab, which is a partnership between our institute, the Department of Antiquities, the Department of Forests, and the Tree Ring Laboratory at Cornell University. And here I want to acknowledge the key role of Professor Stermanik, Britta Lorenzen from Cornell, our graduate student Mehmetjan Soiloglu, and Polina Christofi from the Department of Antiquities. We also benefited from the conservation expertise of Christofi, also from the Department of Antiquities. Dendrochronology can provide high-resolution dates and timber sourcing information for wooden cultural heritage. Cross-dating has permitted the compilation of continuous reference chronologies connecting living trees with past wooden remains. Systematic work by the Cornell team, and which has been continuing now in the context of our laboratory, has established long composite chronologies which allow us to provide dates for buildings and objects all the way back to antiquity. And this slide is just to show you how these composite and these reference chronologies are made. You start with living trees, and then you move backwards, taking samples from buildings, monuments, sites, and then going all the way back to antiquities using samples from archaeological objects and paleo-environmental wooden samples. The wooden door at the Paphos Gate is made with a total of 17 timber logs. All of them are Calabrian pine, Pinus brutia, available on the slopes of the Troodos. We were able to sample 12 of them. We used both core drilling to the left, and you see the drilling, you see Sturt drilling one of the timbers, and then this is the resulting core sample that comes out once a core drilling effort is successful. We also used a non-invasive scanning method. All it takes is that one needs to kind of really clear and shine the upper part of the wood, or the part of the wood where the rings are best preserved and also visible, and then the scanning produces equally good results. And this is a method along with other imaging methods that we are developing. And as you can understand, non-invasive methods and approaches are always preferable. So out of the timbers that we were able to date, one stood out as it was cut after 1872 and was used in a late 19th century repair. But 5 timbers offered us a continuous 135-year chronology, which gave us a minimum cutting date of 1444. And I want to here show you, this is like the big map of our chronology from different sites and monuments that we're building in Cyprus. This is where this 135-year chronology fits from the Paphos Gate. Concerning the average lifespan of Calabrian pines, which is approximately 150 to 200 years, we are estimating a second to third quarter of the 16th century cutting date for the Paphos Gate timbers. But what does this mean for our study of the gate and its history? First, I want to admit that this discovery truly caught us all by surprise, since the chronological estimation of the Department of Antiquities pointed to a more recent dating of the wooden door, most probably a 19th or even an early 20th century date related to restoration works at the site. This chronological window given by our dendro study permits 2 possibilities. The first and most probable team of the Virtual Environments Lab, led by Yorgos Artopoulos, who worked with our APAC team to document the site and then developed impressive visualization projects and applications that have helped us to digitally reconstruct earlier chapters of the gate's history. You see here below, it's the site of the gate in 1951. Their work has also used the immersive virtual environment of the gate to map the experience of visitors towards the co-creation and design of the beautiful open-air heritage site which is being completed these days, designed by them. I consider the Paphos Gate project, which actually was the first collaborative effort Yorgos and I undertook together, to be a perfect example of StarC's interdisciplinary potential. There is so much material we would love to share with you, and hopefully on a group visit to the site. As I was planning for this talk, I hope to be able to address additional examples from our research and tell more stories of art, archaeology, and culture. And I guess we'll have to wait for another chance to share aspects of our activities at APAC and the ways we work together to provide holistic and contextual approaches to the study of the past. I will use my last slide as a placeholder for a future discussion of some of these stories. For example, to the left, I would like to talk about how we used a range of digital imaging methods to document and read the graffiti of Karamanli visitors at the monastery of St. John Lambadistis in Kalopanaiotis, and how their study spurred a broader understanding of pilgrimage and cult around the relics of the miracle-making saint. I also want to talk about our analytical and digital work in the creation of an exact replica of a medieval Maronite cross, which was presented by the Maronite Church of Cyprus to Pope Francis during his December 2021 visit, and how his blessing and liturgical use of the cross has challenged our perceptions of the notion of original and copy in the context of liturgy and ritual. Finally, I hope to be able to share with you how our collaborative work in the digital documentation and visualization of the so-called Othello Tower in Famagusta has helped us to better understand key chapters in the life of the iconic monument, namely its use as a seaside palace by the French Lusignan kings of Cyprus and its transformation into an impregnable fortress by the Genoese between 1372 and 1464. But I will stop here with a promise of more exciting stories to share and enjoy together. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas, for an interesting presentation. Well, I think my question is quite obvious because you mentioned that the Paphos gate was covered in the flood and everything, and later you found out that the door is actually ancient, which brings the question, what will be the next step of its life? Will it stay there? Will it be museified? Will it be moved? Or
For now, it's staying there. It's been preserved and it's going to stay there. Although, when the director of antiquities heard that it's the original one, she said, well, this is the most ancient part of the gate, along with those tombstones, and said maybe we should consider moving it to the museum. So I don't know. But for now it's staying there, but it's definitely something to really take care of. We don't have a lot of wooden heritage of such importance.
thank you.
Thank you very much for a fascinating talk. My question is regarding the tree chronology. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that is done? You can see that signature.
Certain trees, like pine, for example. As you know, trees grow one growth ring each year, and it's been established that certain trees grow, when they grow in a particular region together, we can measure they share more or less the same width of growth rings. So, for example, pines from the east side of Troodos, unless they received particular care, particular, water, or they were next to a water stream, or they received especially different conditions, all of them will grow the same growth ring, which can then be measured, and with the use of reference chronologies, we can then match the sample we have with these reference chronologies, because what we have is a map of years of normal, extreme, or low precipitation, which is clearly marked and mapped on the width of the growth of the tree. So this is essentially the way. And there are other techniques, how we cross-date, how we provenance. It's a long process. There are additional methods that further enrich the way we can kind of get a specific date. There is statistics, because to get an actual cut date, you have to also be able to have the outer rings and the bark preferably preserved. So there are different aspects. It's a very, very useful and rich method, and come and visit us. Mehmetjan is behind you. He would love to kind of guide you through specific examples. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again. So thank you again, and we enjoy your talk, and we are waiting for the next one. Thank you.